met my wife, Yvette. I was working at Steak and Shake on East Colonial Drive in Orlando, Florida. She came to work as a new employee. She was checking me out, wondering why I wasn't checking her out. To get my attention, she arranged with the night manager to have our supper break, just the two of us alone in the break room, and that worked. But anyway, on her first day, she asked me a question I couldn't answer. She said, "Dave, are you saved?" And I said, "Well, I'm not drowning. Why should I be saved?" I had no idea what she was talking about. She said, "No, I mean saved from sin." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how in the world did I get into this? Like the girl, just don't like the conversation even a little bit. Well, anyway, she'd bring it up a few times, and I'd just argue with her. I didn't want to hear it. And after a little while, she just kind of put that aside, and I just kept concentrating on our relationship, which was going great as long as we didn't talk about that. Well, this was 1970, and I got my draft notice to go in the Army, and we decided to go ahead and get married, make sure we stayed together. Well, 3 months later, I'm in Fort Jackson, South Carolina in basic training, and sure enough, in my platoon, there's a preacher, and he's going to have that same conversation with me I did not want to have with my wife. Are you saved? And I'm thinking, man, I got to avoid this guy now. So one weekend, everybody got a 48-hour pass to go off post. I had to stay behind, pull guard duty in the barracks. No TV, no radio, nothing, just me and four walls for the weekend. Yeah, I was bummed. Anyway, the preacher guy come around, and he said, "Hey, you got time? You want to read a book?" And I said, "Yeah, what do you got?" So he brought me this book to read. It was called World Aflame by a guy named Billy Graham. He's a pretty well-known evangelist back then. So I said, yeah, I'll read it. I don't have anything else to do. So I did. I finished up over the weekend. And I thought, well, maybe there's something to it. Maybe not. Who knows? But I came home then for 2 weeks leave before shipping out to Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And I just saying goodbye to my friends here. I knew I wasn't going to see them for a couple of years. So this guy, Dennis, I'm at his apartment. He's smoking weed. He wants me to get high with him. I said, "Dennis, I'm just saying goodbye, man. I'm going to the airport now." And so as a joke, he reached on his bookshelf, pulled off a paperback book and tossed it at me. He said, "Here's a going away present for you, man." And he laughed. I caught it, and it was another book by Billy Graham, Peace with God. And I remember standing there in his apartment thinking, now, how in the world does this happen? He's totally whacked, and this is a joke, and yet it ends up being the same kind of book the preacher had me read. So I thought, well, if there's a reason this keeps showing up, maybe I ought to read the book and find out what it is. So I'm reading the book on the flight out to El Paso, and it's making me think of things that are changing in my life at that time. I'm still just 19 years old, and I'm going to be a dad in 6 months, and I'm thinking, good night. This is serious stuff here. The book really got my attention on that. And, it's all about doing it the right way, and it's like, well, I got a lot of growing up to do real fast here if I'm going to do it the right way. And I was thinking about Yvette and I, when I was still working at Steak and Shake. We were doing pretty good as a newlywed couple, but I'd be getting off 1 o'clock in the morning on weekends at Steak and Shake, and I'd just go party with my friends, stay out all night, and come in the house about 5 a.m. Well, she'd be waiting up all night for me, and, never give me a minute's grief. Just wanted to make sure I was okay, and maybe spend some time with me. But, unfortunately, I didn't even appreciate what she was doing. I just kind of laugh it off and go to bed. And now I'm reading this book, I'm thinking, good night, what did I do? Marry a saint? This woman is good as gold. I mean, she never gave me a hard time about any of that. And yet, I could tell she was putting a whole lot more into this relationship than I was, and I could feel that. And I thought, this gal, she deserves so much better. And so I was making just some decisions. I knew I had to make some changes, going to be a dad soon. And she always wanted to go to church, but she didn't drive at first. And I wasn't a church goer, so that wasn't something I wanted to do. But now I thought, I got to make some changes here. I'm going to start taking my wife to church, take my kid to church, raise my kid in church, and just stop the craziness, do the whole thing, become a believer. I felt good about that. The only thing is I couldn't really wrap my head around what that meant. But the next day I'm reading the book some more, and the guy said, well, if you made your decision, read the Bible. And I thought, okay, now somebody gave me a New Testament on the way to basic training. Let me see if I can find that and get started reading it. But the only problem was I couldn't make any sense out of it, and it was really making me angry. I thought, I am seriously trying here. Help me out. This is not working. Is this some kind of joke or what? But I sat there for the longest time just staring at the cover of that New Testament, wondering what's going on. And after a while, for some reason, I opened up the back cover, I guess just see what was in there. Well, anyway, what I found was a list of verses on the topic of salvation, and I did understand those. They were pointed right at me. And the first one said, there's no one righteous in God's sight, not even a single person. And I guess the reason that hit me so hard is because that's exactly what I was trying to do, is make myself into a believer or a righteous person. And it wasn't working. God wasn't having any part of it. And I just felt like he was staring right through my soul. And I asked her about that later. I said, what was that feeling? She said, I don't know. But she said, I was so scared you're going to end up in Vietnam and get killed. She said, I was really heating up my prayers for you to get saved, just in case. And I told her, if that's what it was, I said, baby, I was feeling the heat for sure. And then it said, the wages of sin is death. I felt that one. And then it said, the all of sin and come short of the glory of God. And every one of those was hitting me hard. But the last verse, about 5 or 6 in that list is all there was. Well, the last one had a completely different feel to it. Jesus said, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him. And I thought, okay, now maybe this is what she's talking about here, being saved, because I was feeling, I was tracking with that thought for a little bit till I spotted a prayer right under that, sample prayer, and it triggered this argument I had with her months earlier where I told her, I said, you can't just say a prayer and everything will change. That's crazy. Now I'm using that to talk myself out of it, but I'm getting angry again, and I know that's no good. I want to figure this out. So I told myself, I'm going to read down through here one more time, see what was going on with that last verse. Well, long story short, I did read through that list of verses very thoughtfully 3 times, but I ended up talking myself out of it 3 times. And the last thing I told myself was, this is not for me. I didn't grow up around this stuff. I don't even know what it is. I mean, I'd go to church, I'd make a fool of myself. So I just dismissed it once and for all. And as soon as I did, I got this flash of insight. If you could just trust me to forgive your sins, couldn't you trust me to teach you to live a life you don't know anything about? So I'm thinking, all right, that's making sense, because it's how I could do it and not make a fool of myself and be genuine. And it also got me looking at the one verse in that list I could never fully understand is, while we're still sinners, Christ died for us. And then I looked at the prayer and I thought, okay, now I'm getting it. You can't do it on your own. Like I was been trying to do, you have to have help, and you have to admit that Jesus is the one that came to bring that help that only he could by dying on the cross and raising again from the dead. So yeah, as soon as I understood that, I was in all the way. Made my decision, my attitude improved like about 1,000%. But anyway, a couple of days later, I was trying to open a combination lock for the first time and not getting it, lost my temper and cussed using God's name in vain. But immediately I said, oh, I'm so sorry. And that never happened before. I'd talked that way my whole life, and it never meant anything to me. But all of a sudden now it's like, dude, you just dissed your Heavenly Father. And I was feeling it. It really was. I thought, man, I got to get into that book and find out what's going on. I did. Got Yvette moved out to El Paso, and that was a big help. We got into a good church, and yeah, she had me then on a completely different path than I had ever been on before she found me. But anyway, all she did was pray for me and never give up on me. And, I thank God for her every day. And I thank God for his gift of salvation. So if you never heard a story like that before, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.